Hi everyone. So now what we're discussing is the government debt. So where the deficits are evaluated and calculated every year, the debt is the accumulation of all the deficits. So you can have the deficit in 1970, the deficit in 1971, up to the deficit in 2019. You add up all those values and that is called the government debt. And right now it is the case that the government debt exceeds real GDP in the U.S. for a given year. So in other words, the GDP in 2019 was essentially $22 trillion. Okay? It is the case that the government debt far exceeds the $22 trillion. So what this implies is that the government owes more money to people that they sold bonds to and countries that they sold bonds to than is the value of the level of production for any given year in the U.S. I mean, if you start thinking about this, whenever the government runs short of money, they borrow more money. Okay? This is what they do, and they're legally allowed to do this. So the founding fathers actually, kind of foresaw this to a degree. My wife and I just finished watching the docudrama on Washington on the History Channel. It was actually incredibly informative in terms of how our country started. I mean, it was really very incredible. But the founding fathers actually foresaw this and said that the federal government could borrow money, okay, if they ran short of funds. Now, state governments and local governments are really not allowed to do this. It's only the federal government. And this is one of the ongoing conflicts between the federal government and the states in terms of fighting the coronavirus, but again, we'll get to that. So, but the interesting thing is, an individual could not do this, or a company. An individual who runs short of funds cannot borrow and then pay back creditors, and then have to borrow more money to pay back creditors. That's really illegal, and an individual or company that did that would actually probably get prosecuted and could end up in jail. Okay, but the federal government can do this, and right now the debt is enormous. Now the debt is broken up into two parts, which I didn't put down, but I'll put it down now. Is the actual loan, and then also the interest payments. Because the government will borrow money from either you or me or a country, and so they'll borrow, let's say, $1 million, and there'll be an interest that the loan would generate that would be paid back to the person who lent the money to the federal government. So they have to pay back the loan, and they also pay back the interest payments. Okay? So we are barely trying to pay for the interest payments off of these loans. We just keep borrowing more money from someone else to pay the interest that someone's due for the bonds where China, let's say, had loaned money to the federal government. So we have this cycle, and now with COVID-19, things are dramatically worse in terms of government expenditures, but we'll get to that. So let's stop here. We'll see you in a little bit.